Good afternoon, everyone. I am Rachel Allen, the head of the pilot program for climate resilience. I think we all know it as a PPCR, and that's a $1.2 billion program, which is a part of the Climate Investment Funds, which is itself a $8.3 billion climate finance trust fund housed here at the World Bank. The PPCR basically assists governments in integrating climate resilience into development planning. And we do this by supporting the governments to develop their own strategic plan for climate resilience, after which we go in and we provide additional funding to actually put that plan into action. We also use this opportunity to fund pilot and the different innovative measures to press in climate change related risks. So basically that's what the PPCR is about. Now, today I wanted to speak to you about small island states. And no, that's not a disease. It stands for Small Island Developing States, that's SIDS, right? I am from the Caribbean, as you can tell from my accent. I am from Jamaica. And Jamaica is itself, as you know, a SIDS. And so this is a subject that's very close to my heart and my home. SIDS are very vibrant. They have very distinct cultures, diversity, heritage. In Jamaica alone, we're known for our food, the jerk chicken, our drink, the Blue Mountain coffee and Appleton rum. And of course, well, I'm sitting, I can't do it, but we know, home to the famous sprinter Usain Bolt. But unfortunately, we are in a race against time when it comes to climate change and the impacts of climate change on SIDS. Because you see, as emissions increase, it's tick-tock, tick-tock, and that clock is actually ticking faster. SIDS account for less than 1% of the greenhouse gas emissions, and yet we are disproportionately affected by the impacts of climate change. Climate and weather-related events are affecting us much more intensely than the past, and they pose what I can only describe as an epochal threat to our very social and economic progress. I still vividly remember Hurricane Ivan in Grenada. It caused damage of more than $900 million US. That's twice the amount of their GDP. The same hurricane moved on up to the Cayman Islands, and that caused damage to 183% of their GDP. The Solomon Islands in 2014, with the excess flooding that they had, and that cost them 9% of their GDP. And of course, sadly, we all saw what took place in Haiti with Hurricane Matthew. Hundreds of people displaced, hundreds killed, and a lot of the progress that was achieved after the earthquake was completely undone. So if we were to look at the amount of lives that have been affected, displaced, even killed, you're looking at more than 10,000 people. And that's especially so and true in the Pacific Islands. Added to the here and now dangers, such as cyclones and hurricanes, we also have another type of impact that affects us, and that's one that we don't necessarily talk about too often, and that's, I refer to it as the creeping, crawling cancer of climate change, and that's the slow onset events. Specifically, I'm talking about sea level rise, ocean acidification, and of course, sea temperature increase, which causes coral bleaching. And as a scientist by profession, you only need a sea temperature increase of 0.8 to 1 degree, and you sustain that for 17 days, to turn a reef from a beautiful ecosystem to a completely white, bleached out system. So that's just to give you a little bit of perspective. So I don't want to I don't want to preach doom and gloom here, but if left unchecked, a lot of islands will become completely uninhabitable. And some of them actually are on the way to being uninhabitable. But let me try and give you the bright side of this picture, right? SIDS have a very unique and close relationship with the environment, and I think this is an opportunity that makes us well placed for solutions. We are hubs for innovation on resilience and sustainable development, and we can offer bold ideas and play a major role in delivering climate-smart solutions. The work we've done with SIDS at the PPCR, I'm actually very proud of it. You see, we are the second largest funder of adaptation work to SIDS. In fact, we've been doing this work since 2008, and we're now at the point where we are starting to track the progress of the work that has been done in the SIDS. We have 2 programs, one in the Caribbean and one in the Pacific, in addition to work with national governments. So as we document these lessons, what we are attempting to do is to share these lessons with other SIDS and other countries that are not necessarily beneficiaries of the PPCR program, but they're able to benefit from the learning that has taken place with the PPCR SIDS. So if I were to summarize the PPCR work in the SIDS, I could give you 3 points. One is, we have helped to increase their understanding of climate change and impacts. Secondly, we have increased and improved their ability to adapt. And thirdly, we have supported them in developing high-priority investments on adaptation. My own country, Jamaica, which I can tell you I love and I'm very proud of, is a very good example of climate change impacts and adaptation work that the PPCR has supported. You see, Jamaica is very vulnerable to climate change impacts because 4/5 of our GDP is generated in the coastal area. That's where 60% of the population reside, and our population is 2.8 million people. So activities that are crucial to our economy, such as fisheries, farming, tourism, are extremely susceptible to climate change impacts. Water, for example, many small island states are facing impacts of drought. In Kingston, the capital city of Jamaica, Kingston, last summer, I recall where water was restricted to every 2 days. And I think when it got to the point of every 3 days, you started to see schools have to be closed down, hospital operating rooms have to be, limited. So there are all these ramifications of there being limited water. But since we do know that climate finance for adaptation with strategic planning for development reduces risks, and that water scarcity and drought are big issues in Jamaica, we're in the process of working with the government of Jamaica to introduce adaptation measures to address the water scarcity. And this is being done through the private sector and the new housing development sector, focusing on water conservation mechanisms. This project will increase awareness of the practical, competitive, and economic advantages of building climate resilient housing, as well as it will help Jamaican communities and businesses not just survive, but thrive. To complement this, we have funded a project to improve climate data and information management. And the aim of that particular project is to make climate data more accurate, widespread, readily available, so that coastal communities, fishers, and farmers can actually benefit from knowing climate data and being better able to forecast. Also, by contributing and helping to support their early warning systems, improved equipment and technical capacity building in this particular area, again, better forecasting, which means better planning. So SIDS, as we say in Jamaica, I can only say, we're little but we're talawa. That means we are small but we are strong. And simply put, even though SIDS are small, we are on the front line of climate change impacts. But again, we are innovative. We are hubs for innovation, resilience, energy access, and sustainable development. Ladies and gentlemen, we may be small islands, but we have big ambition. On behalf of my brothers and sisters in SIDS, Faftai, Malo Apito, Tenkeye Tumas, Mese Ampli. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. So yeah, we heard it. Small island states are at the front of climate impacts. We know that the oceans are rising. We know that the oceans are warming and they're acidifying and they're affecting our fisheries, they're affecting our coral reefs. But we also know that small island states are committing to ambitious climate action, both on adaptation and mitigation. It's really inspiring to hear what the climate investment funds are doing with the small island states. Thank you so very much for your work.
Absolutely.
And it's also really great to hear that personal narrative, you being Jamaican and really passionate about the small island countries.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I just wanted to get your takeaway from COP22, where we heard that developing countries, I think it was 47 developing countries, are committing to 100% renewable energy. At the forefront of that were the small island countries. What is your sense of that? Do you think that'll help ramp up the climate action agenda?
I do believe so. I think especially when you tie that to the whole 1.5 to stay alive, which was actually a term coined by the small island states, because they recognize that if temperature goes to above 1.5 degrees, SIDS cannot thrive. Yeah. And so it became very, very important for SIDS to fight for that 1.5 to stay alive. 2 degrees, we cannot survive. Already islands are becoming uninhabitable. And of course, for mitigation now, in terms of renewable energy, we need to see scaled up funding in that area. I'm proud to say that the Climate Investment Funds, through another program, the Scaling Up Renewable Energy Program, has been working with Vanuatu, the Maldives, and one island in the Caribbean, Nevis, well, St. Kitts and Nevis. So we are trying to bring renewable energy to the island scale, but I think a lot more focus needs to be had in that area in order to help them to meet their NDCs.
Absolutely. Any quick questions? We've got another 2 minutes. We've got one question there on the end.
Thank you. Richard Jordan from the Royal Academy of Science International Trust and former NGO member of the SREP, the Scaling Up Renewable Energy Projects. Could you identify other Caribbean countries besides St. Kitts and Jamaica that are perhaps being impacted through the funds under SDG 14, which is oceans, in light of the Oceans Conference coming up in June of 2017 in New York? Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Actually, I am a scientist, a marine scientist, so I love the fact that this question is focusing on oceans. I think Grenada, Dominica, St. Lucia are the key islands, and Haiti. Grenada, as we know, has taken the lead in blue economy and oceans. I've actually participated in 1 or 2 meetings with the regional program for looking at the blue economy, but more importantly, I was a part of the Samoa Pathway. I was personally involved with that, and as well as developing the work program for ocean acidification for the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. So it's very much on the agenda, it's very much on the forefront, and this is something that, again, my personal, because I'm so connected to it, it's one that I help to push and drive in any way, shape, or form that I can. Thanks.
Thank you. Any last question? Otherwise, we're going to close this session. Thank you so very much, Rachel.
Welcome.